An intro here. There we go. There we are. It is this our TemTeam Cup May edition. This is our match between J-Doragon and Leal. I am Quarter, and we are going to be heading straight into this game. I have it on good authority that both of our participants are getting straight into it. Those participants, of course, being J-Doragon and Leal, the two captains of Jank, the two lords of off-meta, the two people who have managed to hone their own niche picks to a razor's edge in a truly unique way. As we saw previously in the last setup, obviously both of them were running Inky at various points in their times. J-Doragon is renowned for his Noxolotl plays, championing that Tem, and truly bringing it into the foreground. In the meantime, Leal has experimented with a lot of different things. We saw an absolutely crushing display out of him last week with with Mimit on his team versus a variety of separate foes, flexing it with both Nature Koish and a couple other Tems like Sizemunch that really came together to create some absolute monsters. Okay, we have it on good authority that they're actually going to take a little bit longer. So this does mean that we have some time to make sure everything is both hunky and dory. So that's always a good thing. Right, so yeah, once again, this is a Group A match for anyone who's concerned there. I'm still working on making sure that standings are immediately visible. We've had a little bit of an issue in terms of getting that onto our overlays here, but that will be sorted toot sweet. Don't you worry, folks. In the meantime, once again, both of these Paradox Engine players are renowned for their pretty unique styles of play. Leal is known for bringing his critical analysis into his team building in a massive way, combining an interesting knowledge of the game proper and what his threats can do, and a remarkable capacity to calculate and properly identify both win conditions and the appropriate path to victory. Now, some might argue this has been stymied on occasion by a bit of a mono-focus towards his specific strategy rather than adapting, but that's something that I'm told that he's continuing to hone as he continues to get practice. JD, on the other hand, is, as with these kind of Maverick players, equally wild card when it comes to these kinds of things. He always does something crazy, whether that's bringing Tental to tournaments, whether that's championing Noxolotl all the way through this, whether it's making Inky actually work and debuting DC Beam as a as an actual source of priority on Specmaster Inky, something that before that I didn't see anywhere near as many people running. Very much a trendsetter, very much the kind of person that people take notes from after he does a tournament. It's like, he makes waves as a player. So this is going to be an interesting match, folks, and I'm definitely excited to see it. As it stands, we're just waiting for both our contestants to get finished. I was just informed that one of them was just finishing leveling something. So we have just a bit of time. I'll thank you all for your patience, folks. With this in mind, I'm going to take this brief moment of silence and pause right here to once again identify precisely how many matches we have coming up tomorrow. So if you guys are looking for more TemTeam Cup wonderfulness, then remember that we have all through from, this is all going to be in UTC for convenience sake. So this is going to be everything from 10 all the way to 2:30, just like a spectacular arrangement of matches. Just gonna be like a jam-packed day. We even have an actual overlap, so you will get the luxury, the sheer pleasure, if you are one of those charming people with two monitors, or indeed the ability, or you're watching this in the far future and you get the chance to see these two matches separately. the ability to watch 2 matches at once. So that's obviously something to look forward to. We have as many fantastic names as Mr. Rishi, Tsubaki-chan facing the illustrious Nekoblocky in a real no-holds-barred beatdown. Sortie Rem versus Zukli should be very interesting indeed. Trotter versus Gold, some more absolute powerhouses. It's going to be an exciting set of games. Fantastic. All right, give me just a moment. There we go. Ain't that looking professional, folks? We're all about professionalism here at TemTeam. So, once again, we've got a little bit of time before our contestants actually throw down. I'm just eyeing their conversation and their activity in-game with bated breath. I'm just as interested in getting into this as you folks are. So, with that, I think I've done a good summary of both Leal and J-Doragon. Obviously, the both of them have had a variety of tournament debuts. J-Doragon regularly placing high in Plus and elsewise, being in fact the Paradox Engine presence in the top 8 in the Roadhouse Rumble. Congratulations, of course, to all our contestants there. But then on top of that, obviously, Leal, one of his best debuts recently was, of course, the Club War scrim right before Kisiwa. Well, sorry, right before Sipangu, which, of course, involved him and his magnificent Relax teams. Catching a lot of people off guard with those in a pretty stunning display. Now, between that and his previous performances here, I should hope that people are as prepared for something wild as I am. I saw things like Acronox on there. There's still the threat of a Size Munch Mimic. There's a lot of things to sink one's teeth into. And with that, it looks like our contestants are in fact ready to get into their game. So, I'm going to wait for both of them to invite, and then we're going to get right in to this draft, because it's going to be a doozy, folks. The Caster's Curse. Just sitting here waiting for them to get into their match there. We're almost there, folks, I promise. And at last, here we are. Now, as we get into our first match here, we do see... Alright, so, yeah, these teams... Okay, outside of some of the key crazy factors from my good man JD, it's not that unorthodox a team. We've seen a large amount of Adoro at the moment. Mix has actually seen a pretty significant rise in usage. The Turok Tolkien combo is actually quite interesting, alongside Doro inside this particular team. It's a nice combination of threats that's overall pretty balanced, not the most unorthodox thing I've seen him run. Leal, on the other hand, has some absolute sauce that he's brought. Piraniat having been given a number of separate cool new tools in the form of Cold Geyser, in the form of Purgation, in the form of an easier way to access Revitalize through Paboa getting it, means that it is kind of getting its own renaissance as a support. And it'll be fun seeing how that gets used today. We immediately see the Yaller band there. We also see a Zizare, which is, of course, another thing that kind of gained a little bit of a blessing in this particular competitive environment due to the fact that Electric Custodian is what replaced Electric Synthesize, giving it a reason to be used as a defensive pivot along, sort of in the same vein as Ragnet. And it gives it something, it gives you a reason to swap it in more consistently, which is quite nice. We also see, of course, the magnificent Toothpaste Shark, Mastion itself, in Luma form, presented before us. I can expect to see some Lava Wave shenanigans, maybe even Purgation Lava Wave. That would be quite something. We see the Turok get banned. That suggests that he wants to use his crystals and his fires. We see a Gallus there. We see a Valorend there as well, which definitely doesn't like the high-octane Feather Gatlings from both, from Turok in particular. It's a massive problem. JD picking up the Volphy, making sure that Leal isn't feeling too comfortable picking up that Piranha into that Mastion and going straight for the Jank, or indeed the Zizare. So it should be very interesting in terms of that. Yeah, no, we have two Lumas staring into each other, as we can see here. We also, of course, have Potato, the legendary perfect Transnoxolotl, owned by JD for so long now, I don't even remember when he perfected it. We see Mix as the second ban out of Leal. This makes a good bit of sense, given the fact that that Crystal is actually going to be kind of frustrating for a lot of what he wants to go for, and he doesn't have an abundance of spread. He's got Zizare, and that's kind of it. With that, we do see, of course, Tolkien and Noxolotl picked up by JD inside this sort of draft period. We also see, of course, our Nagais grace the board. Now, normally I'd say this is a Decidueye Nagais, but there's really no telling. It could be anything here. Water Custodian makes a certain amount of sense on this team, and it's not unreasonable to expect that kind of shenanigans out of Leal. In the meantime, we do see Adora Mashuk get picked up by JD. There's going to be a lot of good toxic pressure into what's ultimately, outside of the Valorant itself, kind of a vulnerable team to toxic. So it's a good set of plays there. We got 3 toxics going into that. Obviously, the Valorant's going to run Ripshot over this, but we do have a token to deal with. We have stamina control. There's ways around this for JD. And the final pickup, as we see, is the toothpaste shark itself, the illustrious Colgate Beast Mastion. So I'm very interested in seeing how this winds up going. So, game 1, turn 1, between J-Doragon and Leal, and right out the gate, we have, of course, our heater turn onto this Valorant, meaning it's not going to be able to assert the kind of pressure that it wants to. A lot of this is going to come down to, is this a aerobic? Is this anaerobic? We have no idea just yet. But what we do know is that it's probably going to want to start trying to throw some Nox bombs into this floof. Now, obviously, the biggest challenge inside that is the fact that we have a massive problem with our sort of... a massive problem with so many defensive swaps in the background there, which is kind of an issue, obviously. It means that it's more reasonable just to throw Feather Gatlings into that spot instead. Sorry, blue screen there for a second, guys. The other side of that is you kind of want to be keeping that pressure up there, because all JD needs to do is rotate in a Mashuk, and suddenly this board starts looking very stacked in JD's favor. That draft, in fact, the moment this Valorant takes too much pressure, that becomes a problem. We see Mastion immediately take this initiative to just charge in. As the Valorant actually bounces out, bringing the guys on the board, this suggests almost immediately that this is, in fact, a Decidueye Nagais, and that what we're going to see next is a Meteor Swarm. It's just unlikely that I would see that in the wake of, say, Volphy. So this could, in fact, be a double ruse, and this is a Water Custodian Nagais. The reason why I suggest that it could be Decidueye is because, for a while, one of the most consistent plays that you saw inside, like, mid-Kasiwa was Mastion Nagais for a Meteor Swarm in Decidueye. But despite that, this looks like it's turning that on our head, as we see the Mastion here has a pretty clean lava wave into pretty much anything on Floof's spot. Combine that with the beta burst from Nagais, and it's looking very dangerous to be a Volphy in that spot. Now, granted, JD could just stay in here, but I kind of expect that he wants to mess around with this, or alternately he just throws a Plague into the Nagais spot. If he does that, that's still going to do a significant amount of damage to the Nagais. If it's Water Custodian, then it will not be able to take that. And if it's Decidueye, then it's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing for Leal to leverage that Nagais in a way that will actually take down this Volphy before it does something on this board. As such, we are basically looking to get into this. So, we do see the Noxolotl actually come in on the Tolkien spot, expecting that to have a bit less pressure than the other spot. We do see that this is, from everything we're seeing so far, unless I managed to miss that Decidueye click right there. No, it looks like I did, and it does look like the Dust Vortex, will be going last unless this is massively speed-oriented, as the Embers comes down instead. Kind of surprising, if I'm honest, and it does indeed suggest that Decidora play there. Man, imagine looking away at the exact wrong moment, folks. So, going into this, obviously, the Noxolotl is a absolute nightmare for our boy Nagais, but Mastion is still more than capable of tearing another piece into this board through a variety of separate options. And yeah, the biggest concern that we can see inside this, I mean, obviously the burn having saved the Mastion, as people are kindly pointing out, is a really valuable thing there for Luke Leal. You're gonna want to lean in on that. Like, this Vulfie needs to go down. And the problem is, the waters in the back are nowhere near as safe versus those toxics as anything else that Luke Leal possesses. I feel like Luke Leal has tools here, but that handcuffs is stopping him from fully using them. With this, we see the Adoraboros hit the field as the Psy-Surge comes down into the Adoraboros spot there, as we do see the Decidora once again come into effect, and Meteor Swarms is the combo there, as it is identified by Luke Leal that he can get away with that delicious spread due to the fact that, first off, he's going to lose his Mastion, but second off, there was no way that Vulfie was staying there and living. So therefore, Team Elusive was not going to wind up proccing in the face of that. So, this does mean that the Valorant's kind of free to just charge back into this field, but if you do that, then it's not going to be too hard for a Tolkien to reposition. As such, we do see the Piranha hop in there, which is kind of curious, actually, if you ask me, given that, even under Decidora, like, that's got to be bait or something, right? Just, hopping your Piranha out there, even in Decidora? Unless that's there to get a cheeky purgation off on Valorant on the other slot. That's something that could wind up happening here. I'm just, I'm hoping this isn't, you know, an overextension from Luke Leal. He tends to know what he's doing. So we do see the Valorant come into the other spots. This is likely a purgation, and the narcoleptic hit goes down onto the Valorant, does not wind up doing an excessive amount of damage. It does look like this is a fat Valorant, and the purgation does indeed go down, so that is a +1 attack to this Valorant, as the Beta Burst also flies in. It looks like JD was expecting that to be bait, and therefore just did not target that Piranha at all, instead going for the gold, the Nagais, that is of course such a powerful win condition if you leave it alone. Very good reads from Luke Leal, and an unfortunate set of plays there, that turn from JD, throwing too many hits into a protector buffed Valorant that was just not taking damage from that. So this does mean that if that's a Pillow Nox, it's going to get a bit of health back this turn. That's always a nice thing to see. We also don't... We have a Tolkien in the back. The problem is, at this point, Tolkien can't just freely come in because of that Piranha I was talking about. So what's more reasonable to see here is just Small Daddy and Potato go charging in against this Piranha. But the problem with that is a Feather Gatling just takes out Small Daddy the Adoraboros right here. There's no way in anything that a +1 Feather Gatling does not take down such a low base defense Tem as Adoraboros from here. So we see the Mashuk come down into the Noxolotl spot. I would have almost preferred that to be elsewhere, but instead we see the Inner Spirit outspeed everything else on this board and come careening into this Valorant triumphantly before it goes down. I can't say that's necessarily what I expected outside of this Adoraboros, but it definitely did a bit of damage to the Valorant. But the problem is, this Piranha does have Revitalize. A remarkable bit of kit right there, coming into its own and keeping this Valorant very safe against JD. Now, all is not lost here for JD. He still has tools into this, but he needs to break this Valorant, and fast. And the way he's going to do that is targeting the Piranha. He has a couple Grace turns, because 5-head the Mashuk is not going to be going down to a single Feather Gatling in the same way that an Adoraboros did, nor will the Noxolotl. Both of those are a bit more resilient into that, so if he can get some good Wastewaters and things onto the Piranha, if he can break that combo there, since both the Piranha and the Kinu, his two Revitalizers, are weak to Toxic, if he focuses in on that other spot, then there's nothing that can be done for Luke Leal outside of kind of grinning and bearing it. But, you have to be prepared to take the feather gatlings that are coming at you. I almost kind of appreciate seeing the plague go down on the Valorend here, and that's precisely what we see JD do, attempting to sap the stamina of this Valorend. Even though it has this white band, it's still something that you want to make sure happens. We see the perfect jab just go on it as well, as he's actually just fomenting all of his pressure into that, trying to render it both inactive and make sure that that +1 Valorant can't get up to too much mischief while he's targeting the supports. This is also pretty reasonable, but the Cold Geyser is going to come and tax JD, taking out his Volphy pretty reasonably, even though it does come at the cost of an overexertion for that Piranha. So since that Piranha has overexerted, that's less support in for the Valorend this turn. This means that it could be vulnerable to a bit more focus, given the fact that the perfect jab went down last turn. It's back down to neutral in terms of its defense value. Obviously, another Feather Gatling, having done almost 40% to 5-head, even through a double screen, is not something you want to see. The +1 attack on this Valorant, really nightmarish. But, I still feel like JD can take that back. It's just that you gotta make sure this thing's over yesterday. The rest of the team kind of crumbles if the focal point of Valorant is taken down. Obviously, Leal still has tools against the rest of this, but it has to be taken down. And the problem is, the rest of his team is geared to ensure that it stays alive. The defensive buffs come right back on, thanks to Protector Kinu swapping in there, meaning these perfect jabs, while they will bring it back down to neutral again, is it gonna be enough? The Acid Reflux comes out of the Noxolotl, which is going to catch the Kinu in the crossfire, but this Kinu is specially defensive, and it will not even be going down to the poison ticks of this Acid Reflux. So that's impressive to see. This does mean that Leal does have one additional Protector proc potentially, or alternately the ability to just throw a sacrifice into this Valorend or a Revitalize into it without any real care for this Kinu. Which is one of the things that you can always see when you get a Kinu down low, but you don't take it out, is that the opponent can just do whatever they want with that Kinu. They can just sort of throw that into using a support move, throwing a beta burst out, revitalizing one last time, getting a sacrifice off, whatever you will. As we do see the Revitalize come down onto the Valorant, all of that hard work that's gone into that not amounting to anything, as the Tulkun is kind of relegated to eating these Feather Gatlings, which are still doing almost 20%. Pretty significant. Now, as with before, nothing in Leal's spot actually resists wind on the Kinu slot either, so that's kind of a nice thing. Definitely something that works out there. So, we could very well see just like a wind burst go down into the Kinu spot, and that would be pretty significant. You could follow that up with a tornado next turn, depending on whether it's the Nagais or the Piranha, and you can start trying to work this back from there. The problem is this Valorant's going to continue getting value, and I don't see any way to properly hit that on the special defensive side. It has flagged itself as an arrow, given the fact that all of these wind attacks have not given it anything. And the Kinu outspeeds the Tulkun, putting it to sleep. There goes that avenue for JD, as Leal is just running circles around him, waking him up after the fact as well, thanks to the Nox Bomb. Hold on, was that potentially a misplay? He actually threw both of those into that. Maybe he was expecting his Valorant to not outspeed this Tulkun. I think the combination of those kind of went a little bit too pear-shaped there. Like, that felt like it would have been a good play if JD's spread had played ball. But JD is notorious for messing around with his Tems, and it looks like the very slow Tulkun caught Leal off guard there. As, of course, waking up his own Tulkun wound up... Well, waking up the same Tulkun with a Nox Bomb wound up kind of biting Leal there. But, you know, that's what happens when you try to make real wild plays like what we've seen Leal do so far. So, going into this, the Noxolotl has not been touched. Pillow has really derived value this game for JD. It has not gone anywhere. The Tornado has come out into the Kinu, ensuring it cannot get this last bit of value onto this Valorend, as we are going to see another Narc hit just chip away at our boy. This Valorant just not getting down, like not going down, but getting very low in the process. It still has potentially one more attack left, but the real question here is what's it going to be able to get up to, and can this Piranha heal it in time? My concern is that this Noxolotl still has a move left, and if it just decides to throw a Okay, a reflux might not necessarily do what you want there, but we still have avenues open to us. It looks like JD's keeping the Mashuk in the back, which I'm a little curious about in terms of keeping it like. Luke Leal has a Nagai's in the back. If you're facing things up for the end game, that's not really what you want, but the Noxolotl is the hidden, true late game threat of JD. It's nearly impossible to take that down. The Aquatic Whirlwind comes out onto 2-wind, definitely still proving that the priority on Piranhant is really valuable to see. The mixed aggression coming out of it being very important, as the Acid Reflux is still able to go off thanks to the spreading of JD once again, not quite going down thanks to the Feather Gatling there. Reactive Vile Piranhant revealing itself as Noxolotl fails to go into trance because it got overexerted into the trance zone. Very unfortunate to see there. It means that there's no buffs for Potato, no healing for Potato. It just kind of has to retreat from the board. And in the meantime, this Valorant is still very hungry and more than capable of throwing more pressure out here. If this Mashuk is fast enough, then it can do something here. But we still have a Piranhant and a Nagai's left. JD's running out of options. Once again, Reactive Vial just showing up on the darndest of Tems. I didn't think I would ever see a Reactive Vial Piranhant, but it makes sense given the role that you generally want it to do. So, once again, we find ourselves in a position where, like, JD's kind of at up a creek without a paddle here. He cannot do anything with Noxolotl. Token got taken out, so he doesn't have any swap-ins for it. Noxolotl just kind of has to sit there and die, unfortunately, unless he can outspeed and take down this Valorant before anything. And that's if we don't see anything else come out that catches us by surprise from Luke Leal, given that he's been just a bag of tricks this game. So with this, my next question is, I don't see any reason for Nagai's to swap in here on Luke's side is the thing. He's more than in a good position to just sort of sit back, let this board push itself, get the last Feathergat instance. From what I've seen, it doesn't appear that this Mashuk outspeeds, and continue supporting with Piranhant as needed. Now, that does depend on whether this is actually happening. What we may very well be seeing here is a heavy amount of calculation between these two high-end players to ensure that they are both actually properly aware of what's going on here, and that this Valorant will indeed outspeed and do enough damage to both of its intended threats, with Luke Leal likely mapping out several games, as he's known for his long-term planning inside of these things. JD's equally good at setting things up and knocking them down, and the long-term planning, but I don't think he has as many options available to him. That may make the decision-making harder here, but we'll have to see. In the meantime, Luke Leal dipping deep into his reserve time as he's thinking through his next few plays. We'll have to see what he winds up going for. It still feels like the Feather Gatling is just a really strong option, unless he's just opting for a Hyperkinetic Strike. Given the fact that Potato here has not gotten any defensive buffs, it would be a way for him to guarantee the outspeed here that would be impressive indeed. Obviously, it would come at a key disadvantage, but the outspeed does happen, as it does turn out that 5-head is indeed faster. The Wastewater just solidly blapping it down, as in the meantime, both the Piranhant and the Noxolotl rest. That was not a very action-packed turn, but it contained one vital key to victory for JD. The Noxolotl did not go down, and the Valorant did. He still is in this game. The Noxolotl is more than capable of throwing another Acid Reflux down in the following turns, and I don't believe it's going to be immediately taken down by Nagai's. The Aquatic Whirlwind comes down, and that will trigger Trance, meaning those plus buffs are available. It does mean, of course, that it's not going to be hitting anything this turn, but the Wastewater sure will, as that goes careening into our Mashuk, which will still be taking a Beta Burst to the face, but this is a defensive Mashuk. It's got the double screen, and it should be able to live a single additional hit, as we can see. Turning on a dime in these last few turns, despite a clear disadvantage in the mid-game, JD's bringing it back due to his Mashuk outspeeding the Valorant at a key and pivotal moment. I don't know whether Luke Leal didn't have the 3 prior, or if he didn't choose to go for it, but if he had, this may have been a different game. That may have, in fact, been one of the things he was calcing there during that long period of time, obviously. Still, though, as we go into the rest of this, oh, man, with those, now, a quick side note, though, that is a bugged reading that we're seeing there on the screen. That is a +2/+2 special attack, special defense, Noxolotl right there, rather than a +4/+4, but it still gets its tasty pillow, it still gets everything else it needs, and the Urushiol wakes up the Noxolotl, giving it the ability to give its trans-buffed acid reflux to this board, and wipe Leal clean. JD once again showing us that he is a force to be reckoned with. Congratulations and well played in our first game as it goes to J-Doragon once again. Congratulations. So with that, the first thing, of course, that I always say inside these kinds of games is how are both of our contestants going to be adjusting their matchups in the second game? This is a best of 2, so there's only one chance to adapt, but the other side of that is a lot of scouting comes down in those first games. And that's an important thing to see here, and I mean, that's doubly important for both Leal and J-Doragon, both of whom are renowned for just coming up with weird stuff that takes their opponents off guard. Once you find what strategy Leal's going for, it's generally easier to attempt to try to countermand that. But the challenge is often intuiting that win condition in the first place. This means that it can be, on occasion, easier to rematch into him. That's not to say that Leal builds his teams with a singular win condition. And if you walk into Leal assuming that's the case, then you'll be sorely mistaken. It's one of the reasons why I expect him to mix up his draft unless he's convinced this is the most optimal line of play. In the meantime, Leal, I think, let JD get away with a lot there. Honestly, even if it just comes down to a respect ban when you have the Valorend out as well, just, that Noxolotl put in far too much work, and it is one of the, it's just almost a totemic Tem now for J-Doragon. Definitely a Tem that he's come to excel at using inside comp, regardless of the competitive environment it's been in. He carried it through some of the worst times it's had in the game, and now that it's experienced its own renaissance, it's only served him better. So, with that, we're just waiting for both of our contestants to enter their second match. Just gonna double check to see if they're both taking a break inside this. Probably would have been wise to see before that. Nope, looks like they're just getting into it now. It's unfortunate to see, but in the meantime, we're gonna be seeing them come in again as we're into our second game. So, obviously the question I've been asking this entire time is, are they gonna mix up their drafts? Are we gonna see the same game? With this in mind, let's get into it. Obviously, the mix ban was still pretty valuable there, given how much was in the back, but I'm kind of wondering, was it that valuable, though? We'll have to see. We do see the Turok ban still available, and definitely something that Leal takes. If your focal point into this team is the Valorend, you do not let the Valorend live. My question is, does JD just ban that Valorend? He has a number of tools into the Yowler, and he does indeed just take that Valorend and knock it off the field. Now, this means we're automatically going to see a different game here. The Valorend was just way too strong into everything that JD had in his back. When you have 3 Toxics, it can be pretty frightening facing one of those. But this does mean Yowler and Kinu are on the table here. The abominable combo that we've seen all too much of lately is more than available at Leal's fingertips into this matchup, combined with potentially some other pretty frightening things. So we do see the Mastion get picked instead. A bit more powerful into most everything that JD picks, but I'm kind of curious about picking that unless you're trying to ruse out something like the Yukama here, which does get picked up. We see an immediate Yukadoro lead out of J-Doragon, which is kind of hard to attend to if I'm Leal looking at this, right? Like, Yukama just tears apart Mastion, so unless this is some kind of a bait, I'm kind of wondering what happens inside this. So we could just see Piranha come out here anyways, but I don't know whether I can really expect that. We see the Nagais come down, still potentially very vulnerable to the Adora that is on the table here, but definitely more than capable of turning games back into Leal's favor. The combination of Embers from the Mastion and, of course, the Madness buff as a potential option on Nagais, something that JD is going to have to respect. So we do see the Yaller as our second man. This means that Cesare is open, Kinu's open, Gallus is open, all of the other threats that we didn't wind up getting to see necessarily as much as open last game, and also Kinu. So in the meantime, J-Doragon here has a lot of things that are still open as well. We haven't yet seen Leal's second ban. If it's the mix again, that's going to shape the course of this game. Honestly, it doesn't seem too bad, but the fact that he still has his Earths open, the fact that he has his Gallus open, suggests to me that he's not necessarily going to go for that, unless he really feels he can't find an edge for Cesare this game. Obviously, Cesare doesn't get its electricity to really go off this game. Electric Custodian doing nothing into JD's absence of Electric's team. So that's something to bear in mind here as we move forward, and it might color Leal's decision to either pick or not pick that Tem, and ban accordingly into it. We do see him eyeballing this Mashuk, an interesting thing for him to consider banning, given the fact that he still has the Nagais. We do, in fact, see the Noxolotl ban, whether it's out of respect or out of an understanding that it is definitely a frightening thing into him. It is not available, as we will only see one Lumaflex on this field in our second game. In the meantime, JD takes this opportunity to pick up both Volphy and Tolkien, and he still has the mix available in the back if it winds up being more advantageous for him. I get the feeling that if we do not see the Cesare, there's every likelihood that we could see the mix. Honestly, I kind of like Cesare into this field anyways. Like, excluding the Volphy, it actually has and the Yukama, it has a pretty reasonable play-in. But Leal does go for the Piranha, which is much better as an overall support for his entire team. Let's go into our second game here. J-Doragon versus Leal. And the first round here is looking like it's gonna be a bit hot. So, with our Mastion in one corner and a Yukama Adoro in the other corner, it's gonna be interesting to see how this particular turn plays out. We can expect the Piranha swap or the Kinu swap into the Mastion here. I don't expect that to be staying on this field, given the fact that it's staring a water cannon in the face with Synergy Master. The Madness buff does go down, and there is actually no swap from Leal whatsoever. A very unexpected thing to see. We see the Virulent Gust potentially coming down from JD, as instead we see a Toxic Ink going to cut through the defenses of this Nagais comparatively. Obviously, it still has to work off the horrible base attack and also the burn from this Ouroboros, and it is a Water Custodian, it looks like. Hold on. Am I reading that correctly? I could have sworn that was a Decidora. Maybe he just targeted it into that. I can't imagine targeting that into that, though, and it does look as though that it was inverted, so it must have just been targeted into that, anticipating a potential swap, or just trying to get a bit more health down. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, no, it was definitely Decidora. Obviously, the Madness buff went first, so it doesn't make any sense otherwise. And with the double screen, obviously, we did already see a DA last game, and we're not allowed to see things swap, so yeah, no, JD just straight up aimed the water cannon into the Nagais, despite the Nagais already being identified as the double screen holder of Leal's team. My assumption is he was expecting potentially a Gallus swap. That's about the only other thing I can think of outside of a misclick. So whether it's a misclick, whether it was intentional, we do see that that's what happens there. It does appear from other things that I'm seeing there that perhaps... Oh, no, sorry, I'm misreading another entire set of messages there. I needed to punish M-Buff, says J-Doragon. Well, that explains a lot there, champ. So, getting into our next turn, we do see the Ouroboros flee before the might of Mastion, aware of the sheer power of the meteors coming down there and trying to get a burn onto the Nagais, getting that extra bit of damage onto there as the meteor whiffs into the Tolkien and does not do too much damage into the Yukama, while J-Doragon keeps the comparatively low base defense Ouroboros safe, and the burn saves the Yukama from a near certain death, and the combination of the burn and the toxic and the blizzard will take down the Nagais in our second turn. The attrition actually succeeding in taking it down. I think that's an interesting trade to try to really envisage there. I do think it still favors JD, obviously, because it's a proper first blood, but he took a lot of damage on his Yukama and his Adoro for the privilege of it, and that Fire Chip Mastion is pretty much ready to keep on swinging here. We could see the Piranhian come into this board very easily, and then, I mean, for all we know, we could even see the Mastion just bounce as Kinu or Gallus comes into that other slot to eat the potential of an Aquatic Whirlwind, and who knows what could happen from there. In the meantime, JD, I don't see any reason for him to not just keep this Yukama on the board. Like, it's pretty much free real estate against this Mastion, and honestly, it still trades fairly comfortably into everything else that we can see. Even the Kinu, like, the Kinu can't do much to the Yukama. Yukama can't do an excessive amount to the Kinu. It kind of works out. We do see the Piranhian hit the field. Makes a lot of sense. It's got the opportunity to throw a Purgation in there. It's got the opportunity for a Revitalize, and I think Purgation Gallus is potentially the play that we're going to see this turn. If the Gallus comes in, we haven't seen a Chamomile user, so it could very well be a Mirroring Gallus. That would be kind of a non-bow for the Purgation, but only insofar as it would vanish when it leaves. As we all know, you can buff a Chamomile Tem if you don't care about getting it off the field. So if that's something that Luke Leal's planning, we may very well see it. We do see the Tolkien vanish, fearing the Geyser and trying to get a bit more Synergy Master damage up there with the Aquatic Whirlwind. We see, with the Water Cannon. We see the Gallus come in on the Piranhian spot, as it turns out. Not what I'd expected at all, as it is in fact a double swap into Kinu Gallus. Oh man, this is a proper throwback to Tukma right there. Not what I expected at all, but an interesting reposition to try to keep control of this board, which, as we saw, was in danger of escalating into a direction that perhaps Luke Leal didn't want it to go. The poison takes are going to do some work there, but unfortunately it's only the last HP on Kinu that really matters. And in the meantime, the Gallus enjoyed that saucy +1/+1 defense boost there, which is going to be very important for it. Obviously, this Gallus is kind of, this is Adoraboros' worst nightmare. It's definitely not going to appreciate getting into this. And the double in potential of a Beta Burst and a Crystal Bite or a Sharp Stabs into that spot means that Mashuk, the best thing for resisting those physical hits from Gallus, is not able to hit this board. If we were expecting a Hook Kick instead, which would not hit this Adoraboros effectively, then the best thing that would be comfortable swapping into that would be the Tulkin, which honestly still feels pretty comfortable going into this board, but it's got, like, once again, Luke Leal could be anticipating this, and this could be an opportunity to just swap the Kinu back out and get the Piranhian in. This is all stuff that we have to keep in mind as we go into our next turn. I don't say the Mastion coming in is the main problem here. Yukama, it still has stamina for an extra attack. It can afford the overexert if it knows it's going to land a real juicy target, and it's throwing out Synergy Master water cannons like it's going out of style. So maybe we keep the Shark at home for a bit until this Yukama is dealt with. Then it still has the Volphy to deal with. It still has a Mashuk to deal with. Things aren't smooth sailing for the Shark, but the Gallus, on the other hand, is looking pretty free as it's staring hungrily into this other spot. The combination of the Crystal and the Beta Burst feels pretty valuable into that. Only Tolkien eating that effectively. That kind of feels like the best outlet of play here. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with what we're seeing so far. I did not expect that Nagais to go down to that combination of damage. We actually see the Yukama swap as the Tolkien enters that spot instead, potentially anticipating a Sharp Stabs onto his comparatively low Yukama, as instead the Crystal Bite lands on the Adoraboros, meaning it just goes down. The Stonewall, in fact, is what lands on the Gallus, and that's kind of a nightmare for JD. Gallus is already kind of a force to be reckoned with, but seeing +3 defense, +2 special defense on there on an Aloe Vera Gallus, as it is revealed, is kind of a problem. We see the Volphy hit the board here, but Hook Kick is up for Gallus, so this is either a bait or a real ballsy decision to try to lure into a... Nah, it's either a bait or a real ballsy decision, because either you're, like, trying to plague something here, which makes no sense, or you're just immediately swapping into 5-head, hoping Luke Leal's gonna click green circles. I don't like those options. Now, the other side of this is it could be just an opportunity to try to lure the Gallus into feeling comfortable here, so that way the Tolkien can throw a fire tornado into it. But at +2 special defense, how much is this fire tornado going to do? I'm not entirely convinced that that's going to be enough pressure out of JD to really do enough to this Gallus. I think he's going to be better off trying to hit the other spot, and the problem with that spot is there's 2 fire resists on that spot, so you're better off just using your wind into that. We see the Plague come down into the Kinu, as it does look like he's just trying to hit anything else on that swap in, or trying to get this Kinu down to make sure it stops getting those horrific defensive buffs off. But at this point, the damage has been done. So we do see a double gash go down onto the Volfi. That's interesting. Maybe he was just afraid of investing into the full hook kick there, wary of the fact that Mashuk is an available swap in. But now this turn, Luke Leal's kind of in full bore adventure mode. The combination of Purgation is a valid tool for Gallus to use against this lineup, and also Piranian's own offenses into both the Volfi and the Tolkien. I mean, this is going to be a bit problematic. We do see the Plague absolutely body the Piranian, getting it down to 27.6%. Its energy reserves, however, will proc from that, and the reactive vial as it goes all the way back up to 42.7%. The hook kick takes care of our boy Volfi, and in the meantime, this cold geyser that I'm expecting here is going to absolutely nuke it. In the meantime, the Fire Tornado, despite the +2 special defense, is still pretty significant onto the Gallus, but that's the only attack this Tolkien's going to get off, as the +2 Cold Geyser is going to absolutely rend this Tolkien asunder, showing us that the high base attack of Piranian combined with a good hold 0 water move combined with energy reserves getting buffed in the way it has, just being absolutely spectacular for Pirania, really giving it a niche that it never possessed before. So it's down to Mashuk and Yukama. Can these two take it back? We still have reactive vial onto Piranian, and Piranian has a phenomenally low special defense, meaning there are no swap-ins for an aquatic whirlwind on Piranian's side. That may very well be the best engagement opportunity for JD into there. There's nothing that can take that kind of a pressure into that. And a water cannon next turn is still going to be pretty painful as well. The problem is the Gallus is probably licking its chops and is willing to overexert potentially to get the sharp stabs onto the Yukama, making sure it goes down instead. Still though, outside of that, what else do we have to see here? Yeah, no, that's about it. I don't see this Piranian swapping out. I think you expect the aquatic whirlwind to hit the Piranian rather than the Mastion. You might actually be willing to sack the Mastion here now that I think about it. We're down to just the Yukama and the Mashuk, and honestly, the Mastion doesn't perform extensively well into both of these two things. So kind of... As people are suggesting, the Piranian also still has aquatic whirlwind up as well. I don't know how much that's actually going to do into this with the Yukama resisting and everything else as well. JD having their aquatic whirlwind up, it's going to be going first. So... yeah, I think that's about as much just to be said there. The Gallus is starting to look low, incidentally, in terms of its stamina, so that's something that's going to need to be a bit wary of. But the aquatic whirlwind will be going down into the Piranians, as indeed it goes down thanks to its neutralized reactive valve being kind of a double-edged sword, and that's going to be the last hurrah of our Yukama there as the sharp stabs does go down, the overexertion does happen, and a perfect jab lands into the Gallus to boot. Mastion and Gallus are kind of our last win conditions here for Luke Leal against the mighty Fivehead. Now, Fivehead, despite being double screen and parrier, still has to deal with an Aloe Vera Gallus. While it doesn't have any buff options anymore, it's still staring that and a Mastion down. Mastion with Pyromaniac and Fire Chip being one of the most monstrous sources of damage, without any setup requirements that the game can see. The lava wave still doing a pretty reasonable chunk into that. The question is it gonna be enough? This is kind of my question to both of these. JD still rocking a very passive Mashuk in comparison to a lot of the other ones that we see here, but we do know that he runs wastewater these days. So if he's softening up this Mastion, just trying to conserve his stamina for a bit, moving into a proper more heavy-hitting wastewater later on. That could be interesting to see as the Sharp Stabs does go down into this. The wastewater also goes down into the Mastion. Does not do nearly enough damage back as the Lava Wave's just going to continue smacking it. The action economy is favoring Luke Leal, as unfortunately at this point, Luke Leal's more than capable of taking these overexertions. He can Lava Wave another time into this. Actually, he can afford to take his time now that I think about it. This Mashuk isn't going to be able to do enough, but he does go for the overexertion into there. He goes for the Crystal Bite, which alongside the Aloe Vera is going to take this Mashuk down to 12.4%. It's very dangerous to see, as the Lava Wave may very well be what takes this out. As the Meteor Swarm comes down instead, is this going to be enough? And it will be, as the second game in a startling turnabout goes to Luke Leal, making this a 1-1 to both Luke Leal and J-Doragon. Well played to both our contestants. That was a pretty cool set of matches right there. Once again, a lot of innovation out of both Luke Leal and JD. Luke Leal and JD both showing that they've got some spectacular things to display there. I loved seeing the versatility of Piranhant in both of those games, having the ability to really just explode into the battlefield with Cold Geyser and energy reserves. In fact, like nullifying that exhaust that we wound up seeing there from the Volphy alongside everything else. We wound up seeing some other beautiful things in terms of just the Aquatic Whirlwind versus the Reactive Vial, showing the double-edged sword of the Reactive Vial into that. We saw Mastion tear things up, something that's kind of nice to see in this day and age. I think people are kind of forgetting about Mastion in these haughty days of Firequish. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by. We have a jam-packed day tomorrow, starting early, at least my time, and Universal Coordinated time as well, and ending just after, of course, some other tournaments that are happening inside the community begin. Of course, the Archipelago Adventure League is going on at the same time towards those later matches, but that should still be a jam-packed experience for you to love inside this. So, with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'm going to wish you all a fantastic evening, morning, wherever you are. Have a wonderful one. I've been Quarter, and thank you so much.